Good evening, Internet Explorers. I'm Alexa, the resident ooky spooky girly, and today we're diving into something I prefer to watch from a distance for my own safety: urban exploring. Well, the dangerous side of it throughout history. It wasn't always what we know it as today. So welcome to the top 5 urban explorers who vanished without a trace. Number 5, an unknown explorer in the Paris Catacombs. For those who do not know, the catacombs are a series of underground tunnels that are located underneath Paris and were created during the late 18th century to help alleviate the city's cemetery shortage crisis. Fun fact, there are approximately 6 million bodies buried in the catacombs alone. That's a lot. In recent times, however, they have since become a popular place for urban explorers, who have dubbed themselves cataphiles. One significant example of this is a man who took some footage of the catacombs of Paris sometime in the early 1990s. I'll kick this off with a snippet now before I describe it. So the footage, which was shot on a black and white video recorder, starts as rather unremarkable, with the man exploring, around, just looking around. He even picks up a few bones along the way. As the video goes on, however, the man begins to walk at a faster pace before breaking into a run and drops the camera before running off into the darkness. It landed in a puddle on its side, and that's where it stayed as it filmed the man's feet running away. The point of view shot became disorienting as he ran, swinging from tunnel to tunnel, seeming to reflect his confusion about which one he should run down next. Sometime after that, the footage was found by a different group of cataphiles in one of the deepest areas of the catacombs, before being acquired by a documentarian by the name of Francis Friedland. He later presented the footage on the second episode of the ABC family show Scariest Places on Earth back in 2000. No one has stepped up after the initial airing of the episode nearly 2 decades ago, including Friedland himself. Nobody knows what happened to the man in the video, or who he was to this day. So if you know, let me know. Number 4, the Odessa Catacombs. So, yes, I know you're sensing a trend. The closest thing in real life to the deadly labyrinth of King Minos, or if you're like me and prefer the one from the Labyrinth movie with David Bowie, is a network of tunnels underneath the city of Odessa in the Ukraine. According to the 2009 forum post on Urban Explorers Resource by a catacombs explorer named Eugene Latta, who brought Masha's story to the English-speaking world, the tale begins on New Year's Day in '05. It was a foggy night with temperatures hovering around freezing. Oh, something I'm pretty used to. Masha probably went out with large groups of friends to celebrate and probably have some fun drinks. Now, just for factual purposes, the only Ukrainians who have any official business down in the catacombs are workers in active mines who still dig for limestone. However, that hasn't stopped many people from making the same trip Masha apparently made. There are stories of industrious winemakers and mushroom growers who go down there regularly to leave their product to age or to grow, confident nobody's gonna find it and interfere. We don't know for sure what Masha was looking for when she went into the catacombs with her friends. They could have been looking for treasures, considering there are rumors that somewhere below School 56 there's a solid gold replica of the Titanic a few inches long. Or perhaps they were looking for bodies, since there's a rumor that the catacombs contain the stacked corpses from World War II. There's also evidence that they were used for the executions of Yahtzee soldiers. As one can imagine, the catacombs are not easy to navigate, and that's without the possibility of being under any kind of influence. By some estimates, they span over 1,500 miles, making the network a little longer than the whole Pacific coastline of the continuous United States. The next largest network of catacombs is in Paris, which, the one I just mentioned, and that's only 1/5 the length of Odessa's. Some sections regularly flood with groundwater, others have ceilings precariously propped up with support beams, or they've had their ventilation systems completely dismantled. And hey, if all that wasn't scary enough, they're also a pretty good place to stage a killing. Once upon a time, a guy in his 20s was sentenced for reportedly killing his very young girlfriend in the catacombs with an axe. In 2011, a male victim was found by chance in the catacombs after he'd been dead for about 3 to 6 months. Anyway, back to Masha and her friends. It's believed they stayed down there all night, and in the morning, the group braved the morning cold to get back to, home, but they forgot Masha, or left her behind on purpose. If she'd wandered into isolation, maybe to find a secluded spot to relieve herself, it's easy to imagine she was beyond screaming distance. Maybe her path, forked a couple of times, and she lost track of the pattern. If the area near School 56 had no groundwater or clandestine productions going on, there also would have been nothing for her to eat or drink. There also would have been nowhere to stay warm, since that area is also not deep enough for it to have been much warmer than the chilly surface weather that night. It would have been utterly black, and even with a light and a map of the catacombs, it would have been pretty hard for someone ill-prepared to make it out, because the maps that exist are a maddening kind of scrawl, so imagine my handwriting. Assuming Masha brought down a battery-powered flashlight or lantern down into the depths, it would have died after a few hours, making it harder to continue the search for warmth and water. Now, what happened to her body, or if it even was her body, remains a mystery to this day. Number 3, the Mystery Cave. So it's not that unusual that people disappear, obviously ergo making today's list, but the vanishing of Kenny Veach is truly bizarre. There are several strange aspects about his case, and it's impossible to say what really happened. What did he see and feel when he entered the mysterious cave in the Nevada desert? So according to himself, he said shortly before he vanished, there were some supernatural forces in said cave. So, pardon me, let me backtrack and elaborate. Kenny, a man who loved hiking, disappeared on Monday, November 10th of 2014. He told his family that he was going on a short overnight trip into the Sheep Mountains in Nevada. Sadly, that wasn't the case, or it wouldn't be newsworthy today. 1 month earlier, he had allegedly discovered a very strange cave in the Mojave Desert. He said the cave evoked a strange, possibly supernatural occurrence within him, and he had to explore it. He wanted to show the world the unusual cave he had discovered, but obviously he didn't return home from his trip and was never seen again. Before his disappearance, Kenny commented on a YouTube video claiming to have found a cave, around the Nellis Air Force Base. And Kenny was apparently a brave explorer and entered every cave he came across, but this particular cave frightened him. To quote directly, he wrote, "I am a long-distance hiker. One time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base, I found a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find, but as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. The closer I got to the cave entrance, the worse the vibrating became. Suddenly I became very scared and hightailed it out of there. This is one of the strangest things that ever happened to me." So Kenny said that he would return to the cave, bringing a camera and a weapon with him, and did wind up making a video showing himself looking for the cave. He posted it on YouTube, but the desert is large and it's impossible to locate the cave based on the video. And what happens next is our mystery. All I know is that Kenny returned to the site a month later to find the cave, and he was never seen or heard from again. The only thing we do know is that a search party was formed by Nevada rescue volunteers. They found Kenny's cell phone near an abandoned mine shaft about a week after his disappearance, but there were no traces of Kenny himself. No body, clothes, or other belongings have ever been found. The dangerous cave has not been located, and Kenny seems to have vanished into thin air. Number 2, Percy Fawcett. So if you ever wondered who or what inspired Indiana Jones, look no further than Mr. Percy Harrison Fawcett, who is rarely seen without his trademark hat. Hey, as someone who recently cosplayed a femme version of Dr. Jones myself, trust me when I say I understand the importance of never losing that dang hat. In terms of the real man though, his resume included a stint as a British artilleryman in Sri Lanka, a tour of duty in World War I, and a top secret gig as a spy in Morocco. He was most famous for his half a dozen map-making expeditions to the wilds of the Amazon, a place he called the last great blank space in the world. Beginning in 1906, Fawcett had ventured into previously uncharted territory in Brazil and Bolivia, where he dodged poisonous pit vipers and made contact with local tribes. Ugh. The thought of snake pits will always make me shudder. Nope. His exploits grabbed headlines around the world and won him a prestigious medal from the Royal Geographical Society. Along with making his name as one of the world's great explorers, Fawcett's adventures also led him to develop the theory that an advanced and ancient city lay in the Amazon. Somewhere. His run-ins with locals had convinced him that it was possible for large groups to thrive in the unforgiving environment of the rainforest, and he'd stumbled upon references to sophisticated settlements in the histories of the European conquistadors. He was particularly enthralled by a Portuguese fortune hunter's 1753 account of a stone jungle metropolis of great size and grandeur, if you will. As the years passed, Fawcett became more and more obsessed with seeking out this modern-day El Dorado, which he dubbed the city of Zed, or Z. He launched 2 searches for it in the early 1920s, but was driven out of the jungle on both occasions by poor weather, fever, and exhaustion. It took more than 3 years of campaigning before he finally secured funding for a 3rd mission. Despite warnings that he was taking off on a fool's errand, the 57-year-old explorer remained convinced that Z was lurking somewhere in the unexplored Mato Grosso region of Brazil. Fawcett had no shortage of volunteers for his final expedition, but he opted to take along his 21-year-old son Jack, who shared his near-religious zeal for the Z theory, and his son's best friend, Raleigh Rimmel. After loading up on mosquito netting, canned food, machetes, and other provisions, the trio set sail from New Jersey in January of 1925, vowing to return with proof for once and for all. So the Fawcett expedition first sailed for Rio de Janeiro before trekking inland to the remote Amazonian outpost of Cuiabá, where they purchased pack animals and hired a pair of local guides. On April 20th, they ventured into the jungle for the first time. Ahead of them laid a sweltering maze of dense undergrowth, piranha-infested rivers, and unmapped territory. During the expedition's early weeks, however, it was the insects that proved the most pressing threat. Swarming mosquitoes and gnats made sleep difficult and travel miserable, and Rimmel's foot became severely swollen from tick bites. Undeterred though, Fawcett set a demanding pace of between 10 to 15 miles per day. During one period of time, he got so far ahead of his young companions that he was forced to camp alone for a night. But on May 29th, the team reached the spot where Fawcett had been forced to call it quits during one of his earlier searches. And there, they unloaded their equipment and sent their guides back to Cuyaba. Before the locals left though, Fawcett handed over the last of the expedition's dispatches. Among them was a letter to his wife Nina, saying, "Jack is well and fit and getting stronger every day. You need to have no fear of any failure," and at that, the trio struck off into the bush alone. Fawcett had warned that his expedition would go dark once it entered, uncharted territory, but by 1927, nearly 2 years had passed with no word from the colonel or his young companions. Newspapers that had previously hailed Fawcett as being impervious to the perils of the jungle began speculating that he might have passed, and witnesses surfaced with bewildering rumors about his whereabouts. One man claimed Fawcett was now living in the jungle, another that he was being held prisoner by locals. Still another maintained that he had become chief of a tribe of people eaters along the river. In 1928, the Royal Geographical Society's George Miller Diet launched the first ever expedition to search for Fawcett and his party. He emerged from the jungle convinced that the expedition had perished, but he had no hard evidence and was unable to locate any bodies. In the years since that expedition, the mystery surrounding Fawcett's disappearance has lured scores of other would-be rescuers and investigators into the Amazon. It's estimated as many as 100 of them have died in the jungle, and a few have followed in the explorers' footsteps by vanishing without a trace. As recently as 1996, a team of hunters led by a wealthy businessman named James Lynch was captured by Amazonian folks and held for ransom. They only escaped with their lives after giving up around $30,000 worth of equipment. Researchers have blamed its disappearance on everything from malaria and parasitic infection to starvation, drowning, and jaguar attacks. Some have even argued that Fawcett's long-time dabbling in mysticism led him to vanish on purpose and set up an occult commune in the jungle. Now, his fate may never be known for sure, but in recent years, evidence has shown that his theory about a sophisticated jungle city was not a total fantasy. Excavations have revealed the ruins of garden cities with defensive walls, complex road networks, and enough space for thousands of inhabitants. Number 1. Everett Ruess. So Everett was quite the fellow, and starting in 1931, he traveled by horse and donkey through Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado, exploring the high desert of the Colorado Plateau. He rode broncos, branded calves, and investigated cliff dwellings. He also explored Sequoia and Yosemite National Parks, as well as the High Sierra in the summers of 1930 and 1933. In 1934, he worked with the University of California archaeologists near Kayenta, took part in a Hopi religious ceremony, and learned to speak Navajo. On November 20th of 1934, he settled alone into the Utah desert, taking 2 donkeys as pack animals, and was never seen again. Now, earlier that year, he had told his parents he would be unreachable for nearly 2 months, but about 3 months after his last correspondence, they started receiving their son's uncalled for mail. They wrote a letter to the post office of Escalante, Utah on February 7th of 1935, and a commissioner of Garfield County saw the letter and decided to form a search party with other men in the area. Now, his donkeys were found near the north side of Davis Gulch, which is a canyon of the Escalante River. The only sign of the man himself, though, was a corral he had made at his campsite in Davis Gulch, as well as an inscription the search party had found nearby with the words Nemo 1934. The discovery of the donkeys and the inscription to his parents was written in a letter dated March 8th of 1935. On March 15th, after completing a last attempt to find him in the plateau, an end to the search was called. Some believe this man may have fallen off a cliff or drowned in a flash flood. Others suspect he might have been killed. There have been false discoveries claiming to be the remains, but to date, nobody knows what happened to him. And that brings us to the end of our day, and I'm good on sticking to regular exploring. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed today's video, could you help us out by giving it a like, subscribing if you aren't already, hit the bell for more content from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people.